Hi, welcome to Kalipso Tutorials. In this tutorial, we'll see how to work with action sets. An action set is nothing more than a set of actions that you can call at any time you want, wherever you want. An action set can either be local or global. Local action sets are defined at the form level and are available to be executed only within the form scope. Global action sets are defined at the project level and are available to be executed anywhere in the project. The primary usage of an action set is to prevent the duplication of actions. Whenever you need to call the same set of actions in more than one place, you should use an action set. Check out the licensing management being done in the opening of the first form. Let us say that after the warning of no license, we want to close the project. We need to create that same action 3 times, one here, here, and here. Instead of that, we can simply copy the message box action, go to local action sets, create a new one. Let's call it local action set no license. Paste the message box, and now add the close project. So the final step is to replace all the 3 message boxes in the opening of the form by the call to this action set. I'm going to comment and execute local action set, no license. Save, copy, paste, paste, and comment these. So now, whenever we need to change the behavior in case of no license, we just need to do it once in the local action set. This reduces the workload and errors. In our case, we've created a local action set because we only need it in this form. If it was needed elsewhere than this form, you should consider creating a global action set. Let's give it a try. So we get the message, no license, and we get the message in the closing of the form saying that the barcode isn't connected. So as you can see, the project closes automatically when we have no license, regardless of the motive. Before we proceed, let me show you how to remove those barcode errors when running your project on the simulator. Go to the actions, and around the barcode actions, you can add an if and use the keyword KSimulator. If it's false, you are not on the simulator. So let's say that if we are not on the simulator, we do the barcode connect. Otherwise, we won't. We can copy, paste it in the close form for the disconnect, save, and test it again. Now we get the no license, we say OK, and the project immediately closes. A good example where a global action set is needed is when you want to check if you can reach MIS Communicator. This is the type of functionality that you would need in several forms throughout the project. Let's then create a global action set. I'm going to call it global action set check connection. And the first action we need is ping MIS communicator. Select the communication profile, specify the target. I'm going to rename it to ping. And I'm going to set the hidden to yes, so the user doesn't need to know what we are doing. If we want, we can notify him in other ways. So if the temporary variable holds a value different from 1, it means that MIS communicator wasn't reached. If ping different from 1, we can do a secondary test to evaluate if the problem is in the connection itself, or it may be that MIS communicator isn't started. And although a ping function exists, new operating systems like Android and Windows Phone tend to not allow this type of feature. A good alternative is trying to connect to google.com through a socket. So, if we cannot ping MIS communicator, let's do a socket connect to google.com on port 80, save. And if it fails, the problem should be in the connection itself. If it's successful, MIS communicator is probably down. So don't forget to close the socket afterwards. And we should return a value to whoever calls this action set. So in case of failure connecting to Google, let's not output any type of message. Let's simply return value numeric -1. In case of success, remember we can use the else, we return -2. Don't forget to put socket close before the returning values. Of course, we only need it if the connection was successful. We don't need this else. So if we don't reach MIS communicator, we see if we can connect to Google. If we cannot, return -1. Otherwise, we return -2, saying that we cannot reach MIS communicator, but we can reach google.com. Otherwise, if we can reach MIS communicator, we return no value. A scenario where you can use this action set is the opening of the form customers. If you remember, this is a form who displays data from an online table. So in the opening, if the refresh fails, we can try to understand if the error came due to a connection failure. So after the message box in the failure of the refresh, let's call the global action set. So execute global action set. To capture the return value, we need to expand the advanced options and define a target. Let's put it in temporary variable 0, which we renamed to ping test. After executing the action set, let's evaluate the result. And if it's equal -1, we output the message box saying no connection. And now I'm going to copy, paste, right click, convert to else if. So if it's -2, we change it to unable to connect to server. Check if MIS communicator is active. No need for the else. And save. Let's give it a try. So no license, and it closes the project. So also here we can do the same concept we've applied to the barcode. We can say in the action set that it only closes the project if it's not the simulator. So since the simulator can only be called from the designer, this is perfectly safe. Of course, another workaround would be to create a license for the computer where we are. I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to say OK. Customers. OK. Try it again. So we still have message boxes from previous tutorials on this form, but everything is working. We can see all the customers. And now I'm going to exit. I'm going to call MIS Communicator. I'm going to stop it. And I'm going to go to customers again. So as you can see, we have the first message box is now trying to ping MIS Communicator. We could display an hourglass or whatever we want in this case. And as you can see, we have unable to connect to server, check if MIS Communicator is active, which means that the socket connect to google.com worked. Of course, we should close the form or do something like that in that case. Let's exit. And now I'm going to disconnect my internet connection. And I'm going to try to go to customers again. Again, the generic message, trying to ping MIS Communicator, trying to connect to google.com. So as you can see now, it displays the message, no connection. If you want, you can do something as simple as this. After the generic error message saying that the refresh was impossible, you can do something like show status window and just say, okay, trying to diagnose. Just don't forget to close the status window afterward. One more test. Again, don't forget. So MIS Communicator now is running, so we can connect. Let's stop it again. Customers. The generic action. Now ping MIS Communicator, and you can see the message displaying trying to diagnose. Let's just wait a few seconds until it finishes. And no connection. And the message disappears. Another usage of an action set is to be able to run a timer. A timer is a countdown who runs an action set when it reaches 0, restarting the countdown again after the execution of it. Therefore, you can define a timer to run a certain action set every 10 seconds, for instance. Although a timer is always defined at the form level, timers can run either local or global action sets. You can have up 10 simultaneous timers per form, and the timer is run even if the form isn't the active one. So let's say you want to let the user to test the application for a few minutes, and then you close it if he doesn't have a license. Remember that now we are closing the application immediately if it's not the simulator, and now we just want to close it after a few minutes. The first thing to do is to create the action set with the necessary actions. I'm going to create a local action set, which I'm going to call close project. And I only need the close project actions. Okay. The next step is to rename the timer handler that we are going to use. So you can go to timers, and I'm going to call it no license. This way we know that we are using it and we know for what we are using the timer. Finally, we have to do is to start the timer, and we want to do that whenever the application isn't licensed. So we go to the other action set, the no license action set that we've created before, and instead of closing the project, I'm going to comment, we want to start a timer. So we want to run the no license timer for test purposes. I'm going to say 10,000 milliseconds. So after 10 seconds, the timer runs the first time, and it should execute the local action set close project. That's it. Let's save. Try it. We get the warning, and now I'm going to say OK. The timer starts, and let's wait around 10 seconds to see if the project closes automatically. And of course, it doesn't, because if you remember, we only close the project if it's not the simulator. So let's exit. Let's try this on the PDA. I'm going to bring up the screen. No license. Okay. Wait 10 seconds. And the project closes automatically. So far, we've created a timer that actually only runs once. Let's say that you want, for instance, log the GPS coordinates every 5 minutes. I'm going to start by creating a local table to hold the data. I'm going to call it GPS log, create 2 columns, simply longitude and latitude. No, close. So now let's create a global action set. I'm going to call it global action set log coordinates. And what it does, it's get coordinates So let's put longitude in temporary variable 0, and we don't need the altitude, so we can simply backspace and save. I'm going to rename the variables. So longitude, latitude, and now do an insert. So in the GPS log, we want to specify latitude and longitude and save. Okay, we can collapse all the error management, so we get coordinates and we save it in the log. All we have to do now is, in the opening of the form, the first form, of course, after all the licensing, etc., connect to the GPS, so GPS connect. I won't be able to demonstrate this feature working, so it doesn't matter which definitions I input here. Don't forget to close it in the closing of the form, so GPS disconnect. And after connecting to the GPS, we need to start the timer. So let's rename the timer first. I'm going to call it GPS log. Back to the actions. So now we can start timer. The GPS log timer. We just need to define the frequency that we want. So in this case would be every second. It doesn't make sense, of course. Well, we can do it every minute, for instance. And we want to execute the log coordinates global action set. And in this particular case, we will set thread mode to yes. This means that Kalipso will run the action set in a parallel process without interfering with the application execution. So you should be careful with the error management in the action set, because if you display any kind of message, well, the results may be unexpected because you are interfering with the interface. So be very careful when doing those type of things. Besides, it doesn't make much sense on this global action set to display any type of error message, because since this is continuously running, we shouldn't be continuously displaying error messages to the user. Therefore, when running action sets in thread mode, it's advisable to avoid user interaction. So let's just save the start timer. Timer that, if you want, you can stop before disconnecting from the GPS. So we can stop the GPS log. Save, go to the global action set, and just comment the error management. That's it. Deploy your application to your mobile device, go outside to find GPS signal, and try it out. Congratulations, you've concluded the tutorial about action sets.